Good morning. Welcome to GovSchool. We're getting ready for a class today. Be live on YouTube. Good morning. My name is Mark. I'm with GovDirections and here today to talk to you about the anatomy of a solicitation. We are live on YouTube. I want to thank you for joining us. If you're at that resource, if you wouldn't mind just reaching down there and clicking on the subscribe button, that would certainly help us out. And afterwards, if you find this helpful, choose that like. So we appreciate that support. It helps us reach more of an audience there. GovDirections we've been around since 1998. GovSchool is a service that we offer to help you not only, first we try to help you find the bid, but then we want to help you to learn to win the bid. And I think we do a pretty good job of both of those. And I encourage you to visit govdirections.com if that's not how you arrived to this particular session today. This is lesson one of a series that I'm going to do about the anatomy of a solicitation. And particularly today, I'm going to kind of talk about the differences between all these acronyms, the RFQ, RFP, IFB, and so forth, and so that you know what you're reading before you respond. In fact, I've got a little book that we prepared in Amazon that just deals with this one topic. It's called the RFP, so that you know what is involved in the documentations that you are reviewing, and you understand how to make that work to your advantage. So let's get started today. First, I always like to go back to the pure definition of what is a solicitation. Because one of the things I hear all the time is that whenever I see the RFP, sometimes it looks like it's being written for it's been written for my competitor. And isn't this really a done deal, Mark? And I always step back and say, no. Governments have all kinds of ways to engage you, based on that whole concept of the theory of the firm. You got some sort of service or supply that they need, and they're reaching out to the marketplace. And they can do that using federal acquisition regulations or local state rules, or even codes and ordinances within an individual locality to just strike a deal with you if they need to. Okay. So whenever they go to the marketplace, it really truly is a solicitation. They're seeking your input, they're seeking your response. Oftentimes, these solicitations are a year plus in the making. So to take it seriously. So one of the things that I always want to advise my clients that I work with is the first, make sure that you take the documentation seriously when you respond. It is a business proposal. Make sure you do your best at it. A solicitation itself is a formal government request for vendors, contractors, to submit a response to their recall for a bid or proposal or source of salt, request for information, et cetera. They're posted federally on the ones are publicly on SAM.gov, the System for Award Management. Primarily those that are where they're looking for a larger transaction, usually about 25,000 or above, and they expect that. Or one of the state and local government portals or publication sources. When we first started GovDirections, everybody was using the classified ad sections, still are. And so, in sort of the foundation of governance in the United States, the reason why we had classifieds was to help it with public notice transactions and to make you aware of those. And that's been historically the case in just about every westernized government. So you can go out there and you can track those solicitations, those call for bids. So the government structure then treats the private sector in a fair market, so that everybody has the same rules associated with that. The RFP specific purpose is really to set the rules, the requirements, the criteria for all of you competing against each other. That's the primary purpose. Say, here's our task, and then here's how we're going to try to accomplish that. What is your proposal? Everybody respond back to us in an even killed way, and that's important that you do that. You follow the rules. Okay, that's one of the hardest things about responding is following those. We're entrepreneurs by nature usually, and we want to send them this glamorous proposal back to them, and it just doesn't work that way. You got to follow the rules in the format of the proposals that are requested, and get that information back. Then you'll have more success. Your response itself is then called an offer, a quote, or a proposal, and you got to stick by it. A lot of times they'll say this has got to be good for 90 days so we can make a decision. That enters into that decision-making process that is engaged in you reading the information you've sent in order to make a decision. The different solicitation types require completely different response formats. So every single one of them somewhat different. Now, what you are going to find is that at a level, you'll typically have a like a SF 1449 or SF 18 or whatever. There's a lot of different numbers and letters and so forth in different levels of government. But when you see them over and over again, they look the same, but all of the different types are different formats. So just remember, there's three main solicitation types: the RFP, RFI, and RFQ. Okay, and then FAR sections specifically deal with that at the federal government level, sections A through M. FAR is the Federal Acquisition Regulations. And most times you got 30 to 90 days, but in every business, we need to be ready to go and get a response back to somebody even in a day. Have your information ready to go. In fact, I have somebody this afternoon I'm working with. They found out about a bid yesterday, and they're going to have it prepared and ready to submit by tomorrow morning. The types you need to really know, okay, here they are. Requests for quotes, the RFQ, simple purchases, striking a transaction. I just need you to give me a price. Vendors typically compete on price only. Okay. RFP, request for proposal, sometimes a little complex. I know what I want to do, but not quite sure how to accomplish it. So I need you to help guide me. So give me a proposal. It's evaluated not only on price, but also technical approach. What's your method of accomplishing these goals that I'm seeking to accomplish? Invitation for bid. Typically, this is for like a construction, commodities. It's almost always a sealed bid in some way, whether or not it's sealed electronically or sealed in paper. In a lot of places now, governments are incremental in nature, and a lot of them still haven't changed. So you basically drive that proposal over there to the city hall, and then they're going to sit around and they open up that sealed proposal. The lowest price typically wins, or the lowest best quality. So there's other criteria associated with it that can potentially impact it. So it's not always lowest price. Sources sought. This is really for market research. Governments usually don't ignore those. A lot of times these will go straight to bid. So you get not only on the radar, but if you're the only one responding, then they may just go sole source with you just to save them the trouble. Pre-solicitation notices. These are documents that we issue to the marketplace or government's issues to say, it's coming soon, get ready, okay? Set up a reminder, prepare before it drops. This could be from a notice of, an informal kind of sort of a notice is a government budget. They talk about this is what we're going to do in the next year. Here's our plan. An agenda item. It's on the agenda. I'm getting permission to the contracting officer to go out and issue the RFP, or maybe a federal notice, pre-solicitation. We're going to do this in 30 days. Here's a sample draft. Let us know if you've got any issues. So these are different methods to actually alert you. GovDirections, of course, covers all of those. And right now we're really in that new budget stage where governments just start a new budget, or some of them are preparing new ones that start October 1st. And so understanding that the decision-making process is a long period of time, typically in governance. And you can learn about where governments are actually going to be spending money. So watch those words upcoming at our site, and you'll see those. And then finally, this is these are cool. The request for information. This is when a government's learning and they're trying to understand really what they need to ask for. And if something's complex, you expect everyone to know everything. They don't. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And so they ask the experts, subject matter expert, how they should request, what are they actually seeking, who can actually do what we need to be done. So they ask for the RFI. So here are the 6 that you really will see on a day-to-day basis. Now, there's all kinds of different forms within those and contracting instruments that you'll learn about, but they're all typically the fundamentals here. Whenever you actually receive an RFP or an RF invitation to bid or any of these, you read the synopsis first, essentially the summary, basically the summary of work and our scope of work. Sometimes we call it. In fact, I have a slide I usually use that says, it should immediately start singing that song in the back of your head. It's the one that I wanted to find. You're the one I want to find, that Coldplay song. If it doesn't typically that synopsis doesn't speak to you that way, it's not the right bid for you, the RFP. Just move along. It's a $7 trillion marketplace. There's going to be plenty of opportunity. The synopsis itself is typically a short summary at the top of every, in SAM, we're talking about SAM today mostly, but SAM.gov listing, and also within the individual RFPs issued by local state, usually right up front. Sometimes you have to dig down. You search a statement of work or scope of work, and you can find that if you need to. Or nowadays, we're all going to use AI, and you can throw it into Claude or throw it into chat or any of the Gemini or whatever and say, give me the scope of work for this RFP. And it'll tell you what that is. And in fact, if you're within the GovDirections site and you see a bid, an RFP, and you want to have that done, you just drop in and they'll give you an opportunity analysis. We need to learn a little bit about you before that is actually activated. So you have to actually add your capability statement as well as your indicators of success. And then we tell you what that opportunity analysis means by measuring you against the scope. It's a cool little tool. Make sure you try that. It's freely available to you. Note the solicitation number. You'll use it in every document and email. Okay, governments are, this is something that you'll learn quickly. They like acronyms and letters and numbers, and you want to make sure you have that solicitation number. It's the way they keep records. Okay, we have some 7 million transactions and available in our database that we've kept over the years. Now we're in 28th years of July 1st, and so that data is every one of them has a unique RFP number. Okay, that's cool about that. I always run your no-go, and I was at no-go first, but your go, no-go check on every single bid and RFP. I do this. I've been doing this for 28 years, and I use a tool that was not necessarily all specifically AI. Back then, of course, there was no AI, but I would mathematically just sit down and say, hey, this meet my criteria. I have about 18 criteria. You want to have your own method of evaluation there. We will build one for you if you fill out that indicators of success, and we'll show you a tracking instrument to help you track that. But weighting the individual measurements that you use to help you understand, always throw in some work-life balance in that, and you'll find it's more productive. A pro tip: name your working folders. I use a Google Drive. In fact, we allow you to connect your Google Drive or your OneDrive or whichever type of drive you might be using, your Dropbox, to stay organized when you're managing multiple bids. And that's important that you actually do that, and it will keep it. I usually always name it by the solicitation number so that I understand it. I always put in there the name of the government too. It helps me out when I'm dealing with more than one government. Most of us are, and I'm also typically always front and center in my name. I'll put the date that it's due. Okay, and nowadays we can change these files names. So if it is extended, just change that date. That way you don't forget things. Download all attachments. Oh gosh, the last thing you want to do is forget to submit an attachment or an addendum. So always check right before you submit that you've got everything in the right way. This happened to a customer the other day where basically in the addendum, you saw the addendum first, but then buried in the addendum was a new worksheet that had to be completed, and they didn't replace the worksheet. And so for the pricing, which is sort of not the best way to manage your bids if you really want to get competition in the government, but sometimes you just never know the way it works. But always make sure you got the latest statement of work, the latest pricing worksheet, the latest past performance forms in order to respond. Some requirements are actually buried, just like I talked about, and you don't want to have that gotcha moment whenever you submit the bid. Always download every file listed. Don't keep it on the websites that they use. I go to them frequently and the site's down and it's not available. As soon as you see it, download all the attachments and store them. In fact, you can add the attachments to your drive in our system when you need to store it somewhere if you need to have that. But I would just store it in Google Drive. If you're not familiar with FAR, get familiar with FAR. This is one of my graduate school class I teach. I have them go through with FAR one day, and this is huge. And what I really is hoping they can do by the end of the class is understand how to use it, so you can always get back. You don't expect to memorize FAR for any. My goodness, it's acquisition.gov, and you'll have all the rules and regs that the governments have to work with in order to do business with you. And I would just share with you, if it's not in FAR, they're not doing it. So that's how their warrant level is measured by their success, and they have to make sure they can comply with FAR. And you can go there and find the answer to everything in plain written English. And if it's not, it basically is linked so that you can get to the ultimate answer or the definition. It's organized by sections. You'll see your scope of work discussed. You'll see your instruction offers, how that works, how they evaluate, and how they speak to you in the actual contract solicitation that they issue, any sort of special contract requirements and so forth. Make sure you really understand where to go to find all this information. Spend some time on that. Identify all dates and deadlines. This is a big issue a lot of times, and we've now created a tool for you to allow you to measure milestones within a particular transaction that's issued, so that you can tie to your Google Calendar or your Microsoft calendar, whatever calendar you're using, so that you don't miss something. So go ahead. As soon as you decide this is the bid for me, the RFP, add that to it. You don't want to miss the questions. You don't want time periods. You don't want to miss any pre-bid meetings. Anything there you see here, you've got to keep on top of the dates. And that's really important in the process. And I also like to step aside just from the due dates and so forth. But when you're talking about dates, also understand the performance dates and when you have to have something done. That is a pricing decision for you in most decisions, in most cases. So if you got something that normally takes 4 months and you got to do it in 2 months, well, that's going to, sure, you might be able to do it, but you might have to clear your desk in order to make sure that happens, and that costs you some money, and you don't want to have a loss or something like that. So pay attention to all those dates and deadlines. That's the next step, is find out who the contracting officer is. Now, you don't want to just pick up the phone and call them, okay? Because that's a no-no. This isn't a cone of silence at this point. There's a document out. You got to make sure you follow the rules explicitly, and you just don't never know when you're gonna get that chatty, really friendly contracting officer. He likes to converse with you on a transaction, versus who's probably never been burned before, but versus that person who has, and they follow the rules to the T, because they cannot risk a situation that they don't allow you all to have a fair and competitive process. The CEO is the only person authorized to change terms or answer official questions, so you can monitor that, know what it is. So when you see that email come across, you're able to respond. But do not contact the CEO outside the official Q&A process, unless they tell you can. If a small business specialist is assigned, they actually can be a resource to you. So pay attention to those, and they'll help you with understanding how it really works, and do that. And some, they have a Osbudsman. Let me get that word out. Somebody who can really help you in the process. Send your questions, pro tip, always through the official portal. Never just unsolicited try to contact somebody. They'll disqualify you or rule you non-responsive with a smile. And it's important you violate the rules. They can't help you. Mistakes you got to avoid, common ones. First, forgetting to download the attachments and missing something. That is like the number one mistake. People make it all the time. And it's the simplest thing not to have happen. Just make sure you check before you submit all the documents. And you need to also be clear. I had this happen to me recently, where I actually had filled out, we were working with a client, we filled out the form, and then they issued a new form to complete. And while we filled out the secondary form, we forgot to basically clear the first form. And they counted that off and basically called it non-responsive, which I thought was a little odd, because they're the ones who changed the form. But we did complete the right form, but they seen it sort of as competitive proposals. And you don't want to have that happen. So clear the documents, don't apply them earlier, only provide the documents back that they're seeking. Responding to an RFP with a quote format usually is a disqualification. They usually don't want the price in there, so be careful about that. Follow the rules. Missing the question submission deadline. Sometimes I'm of the opinion, don't ask a lot of questions, but see what questions are there. But I do have clients who like to ask a lot of questions. So just make sure you don't miss that deadline. The other day, and in fact, make sure in these third-party portals, pesky portals that just complicate everything, and they want to go in there and then they want to do a survey. I had this happen to me the other day, because every one of them's different, and you're only responding to the ones, so you don't need to register with the ones whenever you actually want to submit one. Don't ever pay them, because they're just really in the way. But when it went there to actually submit the questions, and we had like 5 minutes to get them all entered, and then they get a pesky survey about how great this company was and how we learned about them, and it prevented us from getting the questions submitted in time. So give yourself enough time to ask them in the deadline, and understand that these portals can sometimes hinder your ability to do that. And I see that over and over again, believe it or not. And a lot of them are just unbelievably complex to work through, and just really add to the fragmentation of the marketplace. There's about 40 of them. Okay. Confusing the solicitation number with the eventual contract number. That's more of a federal issue, but you don't do that until later on. ignoring until you win the contract, which is actually a good little bit of confusion you might have. Ignoring the source of salt notices, they are sometimes the best way to do business by far. Don't ignore them. Okay. Failing to set a calendar reminder. That's why we've added this tool because it happens all the time. And when you have a shared calendar, it happened to me the other day. Somebody deleted one and they deleted on everything. It's just a mess. So don't have have your own calendar set for everything. So those are the common mistakes that you want to avoid. Just what I want to leave you with today is a reading plan to get some action done, understand where you're at to learn a little bit more. But first, go out and look at the different types of solicitations that are out there. Find you an RFQ, RFP, IFP. Before doing anything else, just kind of look and see what they look like. Then download every attachment just to see how easy and how hard, how difficult it can be, not just the main document. Find section C, L, and M in every RFP for the federal government, for SAM.gov, and you'll understand that really is the core piece of information that you need to look at. Put every deadline in a calendar. Get used to that under that process. You'll understand what you're actually looking at. Note the contracting officer's contact information. But when you actually do contact somebody, make sure you use official channels only. They really get a lot of inquiries, and it's you don't want to get on their bad side either. Okay. And so here we are today. I want to thank you for tuning in on YouTube. If you're there, make sure you like us. First of all, this was a good presentation, I think. And second, make sure you subscribe. Yeah, it really helps us out and spreads the word. If you're online today, go ahead and tear down, and you'll be able to see additional sessions. And we have hundreds of hours of videos available for you in this particular field. Make sure you register for your daily alert. Note we're on all 50 states, all provinces of Canada, and now all states of Mexico as we expand and covers the entire North American continent, I guess I was referred to. Wow, we actually cover a continent now, but we actually are in 72 countries. All of our transactions usually deal with one of those three countries. It's their embassies. There's the bases for the U.S., for example, and so forth. So the transactions are there. You're eligible for all of them. Note we have about 80%, 90% of our transactions, everything in the site completely free. Our value is state and local information. And we've been around now for 28 years, since 1998. And we couldn't have done that without you, and I really appreciate it. Over 1 billion bid alerts delivered. Now we have 4 different bid alerts going out every morning, and you want to make sure you're getting each of those. The first one is our RFP Delivery Daily Alert, which is an essential. It's by far is loved by everybody. The second is now a new set-aside alert. So we're identified set-asides, not just at the federal level, but also state and local level, which makes it unique to the marketplace. And then third, we have a War Department alert, which is the DIBS, DLA, the world's largest buyer, only because there's 1,000 sometimes every day of transactions that are occurring. We want to make sure that you're aware of that. And then, of course, our top bid alert. It comes to your SMS, and you can register for that freely, and we'll alert you to the one that is a perfect match for you every day about 3 o'clock. So take time to go and register for those alerts and make sure you're getting those and reach out to us. So thank you for joining us today, and have a blessed afternoon.